sometimes controversial, always politically incorrect, and pro-life without exception, without compromise, and without apology. It's the Pro-Life America podcast with your hosts, Sarah Waits and the president of Life Dynamics, Mark Crutcher.
Hey, boys and girls, welcome to the podcast. I'm Mark Crutcher, as you heard, and lurking nearby is my lovely co-host, Sarah Waits.
Hello, everyone.
This situation in Ukraine, it seems like every day
something new comes out.
You get new atrocities coming out.
There was an article on CNN, and the headline of this article is, Ukraine war could last for years as Putin still wants the whole of Ukraine, NATO chief says. In this article, the quote that they use in here, it says, "We have seen no indication that President Putin has changed his ambition to control the whole of Ukraine and also to rewrite the international order. So we need to be prepared for the long haul. We have to be realistic and realize that this may last for a long time, for many months or even years."
Well, understand here what the goal is.
Oh, yeah.
The goal is to reassemble the Soviet Union.
Exactly. Any other rationality that you're hearing is just excuses for him to justify whatever he's doing.
He's an old KGB agent from the Soviet Union era, and he laments the fact that it collapsed, and he's trying to put it back together, and he didn't care who he kills to do it.
Well, and it's also about money. Ukraine is resource rich in a lot of things that Russia wants, not to mention that their oil pipelines go right through Ukraine and they have to pay them exorbitant amounts of money for it.
Yeah.
This is all about money and power.
Well, if you look at the history of the world's wars, they're always fought over money. They're justified on other reasons, but they're fought over finances. And we're seeing the level of atrocities going up. I saw some stuff the other night. It just makes you sick to your stomach, what's happening.
Yeah.
And you see these poor people just laying out in the street dead, having been burned alive, and women being raped and set on fire. And
there's a new video that's come out. The New York Times did an article about it where it shows a Russian tank and then a Russian armored vehicle firing on a street cyclist in Bucha.
Yeah, I saw his body laying in the middle of the street, still on his bicycle.
A gigantic tank against one guy on a bicycle.
Yeah.
You know, the UN says that at least 1,563 civilians have been killed. And that is a very
Well, the Ukrainian government is saying it's 3,500.
Yeah, I was going to say that 1,563 has to be an extremely conservative number.
There's an old saying, if you don't learn the lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat them.
Yeah.
If you go back and you look at 1938, when Hitler sent his Nazi thugs into Austria, and they basically just annexed Austria into Germany. The parallels between that and Ukraine are astonishing.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's scary about that is if you ask people today, when did World War II start? Most people, if they know anything about that period of history, will say, well, it started in 1938. But nobody in 1938 believed that World War II had started. In other words, the war had started, but nobody knew it. And I sit here and I look at this situation in the Ukraine and I think, are we already in World War III? People will say this has the potential to become World War III. It may be that we're already in World War III and we just don't know it yet.
Well, with the growing number of countries putting up sanctions and Putin's response to those sanctions.
It's a very volatile situation.
Yeah.
There's no other way you can define it. And I don't know if World War III has started.
I don't know.
You know, I can only hope that our government, behind the scenes, things are happening that they're not talking about out in the public that may change this situation. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have very little faith in that given who the national leadership is. And the fact is, you and I don't know who the national leadership is. Anybody that thinks Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are running this country is crazy as a drugstore rat.
Yeah.
Somebody's running it.
You just don't know who.
You just don't know who.
Everybody has different theories. Some people say Barack Obama. Some people say Nancy Pelosi. You know, it's anyone's guess at this point.
But we know it's not Sleepy Joe. Did you see that video the other day of him at that press conference with Obama? And he's aimlessly wandering around the stage and nobody's paying attention to him. And he looks like just a doddering old man who wandered in off the streets. And it's really sad.
Yeah. Not to mention that my generation, the millennial generation, loves to take those things and make videos like the I Got Hairy Legs music video.
And of course, Harris is a grinning idiot, and we all can recognize that. But somebody's in charge. I just don't think we know who it is. And we're in a very dangerous situation. Whether World War III has already started or not, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, the potential is certainly there. And, you know, I'm old enough to have lived through the 60s, the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Bay of Pigs and all that. And there was a point where it looked like we were hours away from a complete thermonuclear war with the Russians when they were sending those missiles down to Cuba. And Kennedy wasn't backing down, and Khrushchev wasn't backing down, and it was fixing to be game on. Finally, Khrushchev did back down. And the reason was that even as bad as he was, Khrushchev recognized that there was an incredible human cost to be paid if the United States and the Soviet Union got into a thermonuclear war.
Well, there's no winners in that.
So he backed down. I don't think Putin will back down because I don't think he cares.
Yeah.
You know, you look at these atrocities that are going on over there where you have large cities with hundreds of thousands of people living in them. And now there's nobody there. They're ghost towns and 90% of the buildings are leveled. You got to believe this guy won't stop at anything. When you have a guy who has his finger on the button to launch nuclear weapons and he gets to the point where he thinks I got nothing left to lose, that's when he's the most dangerous.
Yeah.
We may get into that situation any day now. And it's a scary environment, but we can't allow it to interfere with our efforts on behalf of the unborn child.
Yeah.
And you know, we just had...
That situation is out of our control, but there are things that we can do that are completely within our control in our own communities and in our own country.
We have an obligation. We made a commitment to God to stand up and fight for these babies. And he didn't say, you stand up and fight for these babies as long as it's easy or as long as it looks like you can win or whatever. This past week or so, we had some videos come out and some things happening with these people.
The Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising, they're a liberal anti-abortion group. And Teresa Bukovinak and Lauren Handy with Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising were doing another Pink Rose rescue at Washington Surgery Center when they noticed a medical waste services truck outside from Curtis Bay Medical Waste. They convinced the driver to give them the box of waste from the clinic, and inside were aborted babies. Now, they had made arrangements already to hand this over to the police because there were some babies in there that did not look like they were aborted legally. I'll go ahead and play a clip from their press conference talking about, in general, what's come out.
We then proceeded to unpack the remains of 110 mostly first trimester aborted children. At the bottom of the box was a clear plastic bag with 5 more containers, one much bigger than the remaining 4. Lauren reached into the largest bucket and removed the remains of a beautiful, intact, and nearly full-term baby boy who we named Christopher X. I think I can speak for both Lauren and I when I say this was the most devastating and soul-crushing experience of our lives. Not even years of anti-abortion advocacy could have prepared us for that moment. And it's a moment that will live on for us for all of time. We continued to open the larger containers and discovered 4 more babies with a range of injuries, including fully intact girl we named Harriet, who had one eye open, an incision in the back of her neck, her brain suctioned out, and her skull crushed. 2 other late-term babies named Angel and Holly were severely dismembered, and the final baby, Phoenix, was whole and still inside the amniotic sac.
I've seen the video, and it's horrible.
It's awful.
It's horrible. You know, sometimes we get caught up in the day-to-day winning and losing, who's ahead, who's behind, and we forget what we're fighting for.
Yeah.
And I'm as guilty of that as the next guy. After 40 years in this, you know, you can't maintain your focus that whole time. And I want to encourage everyone out there, that video...
We'll put the link to it in the description. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, we're going to put a link to it so you can go watch it. But be prepared. It's nasty.
You'll see them taking the babies out of the containers and talking about it, and you'll see the injuries, and it's horrible. It's awful.
And I don't even want to tell you some of the thoughts that I have about that because it'll make me sound nutty. But as if I'm not.
I was going to say, I already think you're nutty, so
Yeah, I should say most
that
people
ship
already
has
think
sailed.
that. So. But it will tell you why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And I've talked before here and for years about the fact that the pro-life movement has to a large extent lost fire in the belly. And we don't sense that same sense of outrage and urgency and all those things. That has waned over the years. And I understand that. You can't burn white hot for 40 years. But I'm hoping that this video that they've put out affects the pro-life movement more than anybody else and gets us back in saying, we've got to stop this. It's our responsibility. We're the ones who committed to God to stop this. And if we've made that commitment, then we need to fulfill it. We need to follow through on it, regardless of what's happening elsewhere in the world. And one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this up in connection with the situation in Ukraine, you might be saying, well, you went from one subject to another. We really didn't. We went from one environment to another.
Barbarism is barbarism. It doesn't matter whether or not you're talking about
who did it. Yeah.
The unborn, adults. I mean, it's the same across the board.
Well, these are savages and barbarians that work in these abortion facilities, just like what we see here. But the point I want to make here is that you look at these atrocities that are going on in Ukraine, and you see the video of, like I said, these people laying in the street, dead and burned, and the poor guy that was shot off the bicycle laying in the middle of the intersection there.
All the children's hospitals and such that have been bombed.
Yeah, that have been intentionally targeted
Yeah.
to be bombed. And it's tempting for us to say, well, look at those barbarians, and they are barbarians. Putin is a savage, he's a barbarian. But look at that tub of those babies.
Yeah.
And that's going on here. We have no right to get on our moral high horse.
Yeah. And while we're arguing in the media about whether or not those babies were aborted legally, we're missing the point of that barbarism should never have been done to them in the first place.
Whether it's legal or not.
Whether it's legal or not.
But we tolerate this. And the American people, they don't even want to see that.
Yeah.
Just like the Russian people probably don't want to see all those Ukrainian bodies laying in the street.
I mean, it's hard video to watch, but there's a clear hypocrisy in the two, because when the media shows all these horrendous piles of bodies, they don't say, how dare you show that? The family of these victims are suffering out there and you're showing their dead bodies. But when it comes to the unborn who have been slaughtered and the pictures of those babies come out, they say, how dare you show these pictures? These women are traumatized by this.
Well, I have made this argument before, or told this story many times before. Years ago, we tried an experiment. We went to downtown Dallas.
Yeah.
And we set up a little table on the street down there. And we had clipboards, and we made it clear we were taking a survey. And people would come by, and we had some pictures from the Nazi Holocaust there. Pretty horrific,
Oh, absolutely
horrible
horrific.
pictures. And we told people, we want you to look at these pictures. These were all taken at Auschwitz or Treblinka or Belsen or whatever death camp we had. And we want to get your reaction to these and what you think about this. And it was very predictable. They said, oh, that's horrible. How can one person do that to another person? If I had been living there at that time, I would have done something. I would have spoken up, or I would have been in the opposition to Hitler and the Nazis. And it goes on like that. And how can one person look at this and not say, this is barbarism, this is savagery? How can you not? And so you had all of that moral high horse type language. And then we said, okay, we have a second group of photographs we want to show you and get your reaction to them. So we take those first group away and we lay out the second group, and they're aborted babies. Well, what's this? Well, these are pictures of babies that were taken out of dumpsters behind abortion clinics right here in Dallas, Texas. And suddenly we're getting threatened. People are becoming violent with us. They're calling the police.
Calling the police to do what?
They called the police. One of them accused us of showing pornography because these babies that are killed don't have clothes on.
Okay, anybody who believes that this is pornographic content,
They're nuts.
no, they're sick. If you think this is arousing content, then that says more about you.
Well, anyway, the police did come, but they never did anything. But here was the point. When we showed them the pictures of the Nazi Holocaust, they could get on their moral high horse
Yeah.
and be outraged because they didn't feel any responsibility for that. That happened somewhere else in a different time. But when we showed them the pictures of the dead babies taken from the Ruth Street Abortion Clinic or Record Crossing Abortion Clinic, all the others in Dallas at that time, All of a sudden now, they're not mad at the people who did the atrocity in the picture. They're mad at the people who showed it to them. Mm-hmm. Because they know good and well, whether they'll ever admit it, they'll never admit it in a million years, but they know good and well that if those pictures are accurate, they're partially responsible.
Because they're staying silent.
Because they're not doing anything about it, they're letting it go on. And one of the abortion clinics where the pictures came from was not a mile from where we were standing. We'd ask these people, doesn't it bother you? And one of them said, well, what about children that come by here? I said, first off, it's the middle of the daytime, during school, downtown Dallas, there aren't children walking by here. And if there were, we would not let them see these pictures. Mm-hmm. That's crap right there that you're trying to espouse.
I would ask these people, do you have a problem with people showing children, which they do, pictures of the victims of Auschwitz?
Right.
There is the Dallas Holocaust Museum.
Right.
Where there is gigantic photos of bodies inside these pits. Schools take middle school students there to go look at this.
Yeah, under the heading of never again.
Exactly.
Well, it's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And all I'm saying is, yes, we need to be outraged. Mm-hmm. And there needs to be international consequences for what Putin is doing in Ukraine. But let's not get on our moral high horse and talk about those people being savages and then look at the video that these people put out of these babies taken from this abortion mill in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. Mm-hmm. This is where this was going on. And it's happening all over the country. We can't get on our moral high horse and say, oh, we're better than those savages. Yeah. We're not like that savage Putin. We're a different kind of savage maybe, but we're better than they are. No, we're not. We're not a damn bit better. And when you see those videos, you'll understand that. And I'm hoping that this thing's going to light a fire under the pro-life movement.
I hope that there will be more that stays in the media about this, because the longer it stays out there, the more likely that people who are not associated with the pro-life or the pro-choice movement sees this. And there's no way you can see photos and videos of this and not think this should be illegal. This is wrong. This should not be happening. While you're seeing this and you're thinking that, you're seeing the liberal media make out the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising and Lauren Handy out to be the bad person, the crazy person, the person who's making up these lies, and while defending, oh, well, these abortions were legal. Oh, there's nothing wrong with them. They did it legally. The longer they say that there's nothing wrong with these photos and videos, the worse it is for them.
Well, I said a moment ago that in the case where we were there in Dallas with the photos, that when we showed them the photos of the Nazi Holocaust, they got mad at the people who did it. When we showed them the pictures of the American Holocaust, they got mad at us for showing it to them. Mm-hmm. That dynamic is going to play out here. I don't know what's going to happen with Lauren and the rest of them on this situation. But what I can tell you, or I will predict to you, is that they will not go after the people who did the atrocities in those pictures. They'll go after the people who showed it to them.
Yeah.
And if anybody's going to be in legal trouble here, that's where it's going to be. I guarantee you they're not going to try to launch an investigation and see what happened and where these babies came from and who did what. They're not going to do that. They're going to go after the people who showed it to them.
Or they're going to make a claim that they've investigated and that there was really nothing there. Yeah. That's what I suspect is going to happen. They're going to try to cover tracks and they're going to try to make an example.
And you say, well, how do I know that? We have personal experience with that. With the situation we had down in Houston with the 3 girls that worked for Carpin. The state of Texas did nothing about that. Nothing.
Even after a
grand jury investigation. Yeah, I went and testified at the grand jury investigation. And I was assured that there would be no cover-up. And the cover-up was unbelievable that these people used. And that's what's going to happen here. And by the way, you know, we have that video on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description.
The Babies Born Alive Daily, with the interview with these 3 employees of the abortion mill down there. There were rumors floating around that they were going to come after us for putting that video out, as opposed to going after the people who were doing the crime in the videos. And so that's why I know, or I suspect, that what's going to happen here is they're going to go after Lauren and the rest of them more than they go after the people who did the crimes.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's the nature of legalized abortion. And when you legalize abortion, you take everything that goes along with it, and this is one of the things that goes along with it. So what's going on in Ukraine is not the only Holocaust that is being conducted by a bunch of savages. We're conducting our own Holocaust right here in America by a bunch of savages and psychopaths, and that's what's happening. So anyway, I'm hoping that it's going to fire people up again. I know it's fired me up, and it's fired up everybody here in the office.
If you haven't seen the videos and the photos of all this, in the description, we're going to put a link to the video that has photos and video of them unboxing these babies. You will have to sign in to your YouTube account because of the graphic nature of the video. There's also going to be a link in the description to the press conference that the Progressive Anti-Abortion Uprising did. That'll have more information there if you're interested in that. And I really recommend and encourage everybody to subscribe to the podcast on their favorite podcast platform. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, of course the list goes on. And you really need to subscribe because we have a lot of interesting episodes covering a variety of topics that you're not going to get anywhere else.
What show is this? What number?
This is episode 95.
So we've got almost 100 episodes. And sometimes we have 3 or 4 subjects in an episode. So there's potentially hundreds of subjects out there that they can get information. And a lot of it is information you won't get anywhere else. So you need to be subscribing, and you need to be telling all your pro-life friends that they need to be watching the Pro-Life America podcast. All right, Sarah, we're done. Stick us with a fork. We're toasty. Until next Thursday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight.
We're here to win.
Because winning is how this killing will stop. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.